Hello, this is your host, Ryan J. Here on Conservative Corner Entertainment 2, we have an America First patriot, Jason Miller from Dalton, Ohio, here to discuss issue 1 and why it's so important. This is important to so many Ohioans across the state of Ohio, whether they're for or in opposition of issue 1. Those who know what it is. In your words, can you explain to us a little bit what issue 1 is?
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me on, Ryan. It's good to meet you finally, which we've connected for a long time online, but never really connected. So in a couple short words, issue 1 is a constitutional amendment that was proposed using a ballot initiative, where they go out and they get signatures. So they gathered the signatures. They got enough signatures, this text is going to go on the ballot. The legislative body, the attorney general, they did not determine this language. They took the language and then they got the signatures. Now it's going to go into the Constitution if it passes. And this is a constitutional amendment that is called a reproductive rights amendment, but as we're going to discuss, I think tonight, it is so much more than that. It is so much broader. It is so sweeping, and it has been intentionally written very broad and deceptive to really pull in people who are, potentially pro-abortion, but not full-term abortion. There's a lot of middle-of-the-roaders there, and they're looking to hook those people by just saying a woman should have the right to make her own reproductive decisions.
Right, and that's how they're kind of trying to, I believe, fool a lot of people by making people believe that it's about freedom. It's about freedom. It's really not about freedom at all.
It's the opposite.
Exactly. Where's the freedom for the unborn children who aren't going to get a chance at life? To me, if issue 1 passes, that could be devastating. It will be devastating for the entire state of Ohio. They want abortion all the way up until the time of birth. In some cases, they want abortion 12 hours after birth. That to me is crazy how anybody on earth could support something like that. Now, do you want to tell our viewers a little bit more in detail what issue 1 will do if passed?
Yeah, why don't I just read some of the text here? I'll just throw this out there. There is so many resources right now for anyone wanting to learn about this. SeeTheLanguage.com. If you go to SeeTheLanguage.com, you'll find the language of the amendment, and the amendment it has a lot of write-up on it as well. So there is so much out there. But here, just to go from the language into what it will do, I'm going to read it, if that's okay. And then I'm going to kind of tell you how it connects. And it starts out. Before I start, let me say this. After Roe v. Wade was overturned, you have 7 other states who have passed constitutional amendments to codify abortion into their constitution. And Michigan is one of those, one of the worst. This language in the text I'm going to read is much more dangerous than any of those 7 states. There are also 17 other states that have this language waiting in the wings. They're waiting to see what's going to happen in Ohio, and then they're going to send out their dogs to get signatures. And I say dogs because these people are lying to the people they're getting signatures. But Ohio is on this platform right now, and so this, as I'm going to read it, you'll see it's very intentionally wide open. And in front of a liberal judge, this would be devastating for parents' rights. It starts out, every individual has the right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions, including but not limited to decisions on, and then it goes through the 5 steps. But I want to come to this real quick, and I want to point out to people, every individual means any age, including minors. Okay, the Michigan one does not say it in this term. Then it says make and carry out. Okay, if every individual has the right to make and carry it out, that is no parental consent is needed. Reproductive decisions. What does a reproductive decision mean? And if you look at what a reproductive decision it is, anything to do with the sex organs. So this is where we bring in and talk like this is going to include gender surgeries without parental consent at any age. It's not gender specific either. So it's anyone and then it goes on, including but not limited to. And there's the most dangerous part of this amendment, including but not limited to. So they name 5 things that it includes: contraception, fertility treatment, continuing one's own pregnancy, miscarriage care, and abortion throughout all 9 months. It just says abortion, but that would include, but it says not limited to. So what is that? What would that? Gender selection abortions, harvesting body parts, chemical castration, trans surgeries on minors, cloning. Like, where could this stop?
You know, Jason, I'm afraid that if this does pass, if issue 1 passes, it could open the door for so much more. And like you said, the word individual, they didn't specify the word individual. So that could mean anywhere from 5 years old to 55 years old. And it doesn't matter. And I like how you mentioned about parental rights. Do you want to explain to our viewers a little bit more how that takes away from parental rights?
Yeah. Let's jump into that as well. Considering what I read from this amendment, and then the 5 points: contraception, fertility treatment, continuing one's own pregnancy, miscarriage care, and abortion. And I want to mention that we already have abortion up to 21 weeks in our Constitution. And there are exceptions in there for, I don't know if they're specifically for rape and incest, but we do have exceptions in our Constitution for different things. It's not a blanket anti-abortion. That's not the state Ohio is. But then the next part of this, and this is where parental rights come in. It says, the state shall not directly or indirectly burden, penalize, prohibit, interfere with, or discriminate against an individual's voluntary exercise of this right. Okay, now who is the state, right? The state is any entity that the state has deemed power to, which would be the mayor or the school teacher or the school board member, or anyone is not allowed to stop, burden, penalize, prohibit. And then it says a person or entity that assists an individual exercising this right. Now, if a person or entity is assisting a child with any right, from abortion to transgender surgeries to what else could this reproductive decision include? If you are not allowed to burden, penalize, prohibit, interfere with, or discriminate against, that includes the parents. Yeah. So this, now you have deemed the power to make their own decisions to the individual. And it could be group activists, it could be someone in a school, it could be a teacher, it could be someone else in the trans community, convincing them. And the state shall not interfere with, burden, penalize the abortion doctor, the teacher, anyone. You are not allowed to interfere with someone trying to perpetrate that on your child. That right there takes parents' rights away, because it has a provision to protect the people helping your child to make this decision. And it's just so unbelievably dangerous.
Right, you're right. It is. And thank you for explaining that. I spoke with the the Jefferson County, Ohio Republican Party. I think she's the president, who explained to me, she was like, if issue 1 passes, what's going to happen is that her daughter's, just for an example, her daughter's softball coach would be able to get her pregnant, take her to get an abortion, and she has no say in it, and she has no right to know in the matter. To me, that's just sick. And I can't stand how people go out and I call it blind voting. They go out and they blindly vote just because someone told them to, or because they saw a sign, or, I encourage everyone to go to that website that Jason just showed and read the language. Read that's it right there. SeeTheLanguage.com and see what it's about. Read it for yourself. And once you read it, you'll see. You'll see the truth on what it really does.
Let me jump right here, Ryan. I want to talk about conservatives we often use extreme language. We're often alarmist. Everything is, the world's going to end. If Trump isn't elected, then we're going to be done. We have used extreme language, and what it's done is it has numbed out a lot of people. And so we're at a place as a country to where it's really difficult to get someone's attention with something extreme, because we've kind of been like on the verge of falling off the cliff sometimes, it feels like. But I say that to say this. This is the one. This is the one. And they are doing this intentionally. They intentionally want to take parents' rights, and I'll prove it to you. Okay? In Mexico, there's already a law that's been passed, and I'm going to read it to you. It says, it is important to note that in New Mexico, people under 18 have the right to confidential reproductive health care, abortion, contraception, mental, without any parental notification or consent. You do not have to have anyone's permission to have an abortion, have a baby, get contraception, get tested for STDs, have your sex change. It's already in their constitution. So this is very intentional. The ACLU has been writing about this for years. The ACLU wrote a document several years ago, and it says sex work is real work and it should be decriminalized. So that is their goal, honestly, is to decriminalize sex work. I had that article pulled up here somewhere if I could find it, but it's time to decriminalize sex work. The criminalization of sex work makes sex workers more vulnerable to violence on the job and less likely to report violence. It prevents sex workers from accessing health care and other critical services, feeds an out-of-control mass incarceration system, further marginalizes some of society's most vulnerable groups, such as trans women and color and immigrants. And so you see what they're doing is this is a very intentional thing that's happening. And it's not just written broadly because someone was not smart enough to write it properly. This is not a women's reproductive rights bill. This thing is sweeping to include any health care. And we want to touch on that. See, a woman's health is more than just what is, we're going to keep reading here in a minute, but it's going to talk about a woman's health too.
I've had a lot of people say, well, you're pro-freedom. You're about freedom. You are a freedom advocate. So why don't you support women's health freedom? I do support women's health freedom. What I do not support is murder and or pedophilia or any of that. And that's exactly what issue 1 is going to open the door to if passed. And I'm afraid that there's a lot of confusion and that there's too much confusion. They did this with issue 1 back on August 8th. I think the left spent $52 million in the state of Ohio, all from out-of-state money, mostly from out-of-state money, special interest groups, pumping money into Ohio to confuse people. I had so many people say, this can't pass, we need to vote yes. So there's a lot of confused people.
And we actually had communication out to Dave Yost to make sure he did not name this one issue 1, because we were saying vote yes in August and no now, and they're both issue 1. Why would you name the same amendment or in the same election cycle issue 1? And I think it's been very confusing. And talk about confusion. When you go to vote at the polls, if you have not seen the language of the amendment, there's going to be an abbreviation of the amendment, what issue 1 is, and then you vote yes or no. That's on your ballot. That abbreviation is geared towards making you think it's women's health care.
Yeah.
They don't abbreviate that fairly, in my opinion. So it's, this whole mess has been spent millions of dollars. We're getting, and we're 2 weeks away. We're going to see a dump the last 2 weeks like nobody's business. And that's why I respect you, Ryan, for using this platform for this cause.
Yes, sir. You know what? I do appreciate you coming on and talking about it. And we really have to get the word out, Jason. People need to know. And I call it social media time wasters. People who spend all day long on social media and don't utilize social media for what you could be using it for. In my opinion, if issue 1 does pass, do you think, well, let me ask you this. Do you think they will try again?
If it doesn't pass?
Yeah, correct.
Well, they definitely won't just go away and won't quit. But on that question, New Mexico passed their bill via the legislator because they're a blue state. They know that Ohio is red, even though we have a lot of rhinos down there in Columbus. We're still a red state. They're never going to allow this through the House and the Senate. So the only way to do it was to push it as a constitutional amendment with a ballot initiative to where they go gather signatures. And by the way, they got those signatures in 90 days or less, 800,000. I want to say 800, maybe it was 680,000 signatures in less than 90 days.
Wow.
And the medical freedom community right now is out there gathering signatures. And if you haven't signed the petition, please go find the Medical Right to Choose website. I think it's Medical Right to Choose, and find a way to sign the petition where we, as constitutionalists, are going to put on the ballot that we are going to enshrine medical freedom, like the right to not take this thing, and we're trying to get that. But we only have like 25,000 signatures in a year. So we have the majority, but we can't get the signatures because it's all money. Now, why are they doing that? Because it's so much bigger than a woman's reproductive freedom. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure. I'm sure there's a spiritual aspect to it, but it's also about money, and it's a business, and it's harvesting, and it's all of it. But to your question, real quick here, will they try again? I think they will try it a different way. They will rewrite this, and they will try it a different way. They'll probably try something much softer through the legislator. That's probably the next step. And it will also depend if the Supreme Court judges that are holding up the heartbeat bill right now, what happens with the heartbeat bill. So we're going to defeat this. I believe we're going to defeat this. No on issue 1, and then the heartbeat bill could be reenacted by the judges. So we could we're at a swing, Brian. This thing could swing big, and if it passes, we have a whole different world. You're living in a whole different Ohio if this thing passes.
Yeah, you are absolutely right, and there's no going back.
There's no going back.
No.
Listen, you can't appeal it. You can't appeal it. Another thing it'll do is when you get sworn into office, let's say you're elected. Let's say you win your mayor's race, and I hope you do, and pray you do, man. And then you put your hand, I'm not sure what the protocol is, but for a lot of these, you put your hand on the Bible or whatever, and you swear an oath. And you swear to uphold the Constitution that you are supporting and defending. And if this is enshrined into that Constitution, then you are swearing to uphold abortion to birth in the Constitution, not the legislator. So you have to consider a lot of Christians would have a hard time taking the oath if this gets in there. So the other states that are blue have gone through the legislative process, but that's what they'll do if this doesn't pass, is they'll bring it back and try to bring it through the House and the Senate.
Right. And the reason I asked that question is I've had a lot of people ask me that myself, and I really didn't know how to answer that. Will they try again? I assume they will. How? I don't know. You provided some pretty good theories there.
Yeah, well, because, and that's the other thing to recognize, is because they have spent so much time, energy, and money to get themselves to this point.
Right.
They are like a dog backed in a corner right now. And they're throwing the kitchen sink at us with commercials and false advertisement and lying and pushing back against people like me and you. When we say it takes away parents' rights and it allows abortion up to birth, they're like, oh, they're lying. It does not do that. Well, it doesn't openly state that here. It doesn't openly state it, but it allows for that to be legal. It's just like,
exactly.
I'm going to touch a second here on prostitution. how this would legalize prostitution.
That was
And
going to
when
be
we
my
say
next question.
legalize, yeah. So this is written in that way. And again, just to reiterate, a lot of other states have brought it through the legislature where you can appeal the decision if it happens. You can get a judge to put it on hold. This is a constitutional amendment, and it will enshrine it into our Constitution.
Wow. And like I said, we really have to vote no on this. We need to get people to turn out. And the good thing is, among my travels around Ohio, as of lately, I have seen far more vote no on issue 1 signs than I have vote yes on issue 2 sign or on issue 1 signs. So that's really encouraging to me.
Good. Yeah.
And a lot of the people that I've spoken with, they seem pretty knowledgeable about what issue 1 really is. But for those who don't know, that's why we did this piece here, this broadcast. We can jump back to this in a second, but I want to touch on issue 2 real quick. We don't have to go into depth on issue 2, but you mentioned to me something before about an equity clause in issue 2, which will legalize and regulate marijuana in the state of Ohio. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that equity clause is?
Yeah. Now, I'm not much of an expert on issue 2.
Right.
But what I know is it allows for programs, state funded. Okay, let me start with this. Issue 2 is not a constitutional amendment. It is only bringing it to the legislator. It is. I'm not sure on how you would call it, but it will not enshrine it into our Constitution. That is the goal, but that's not what it will do initially. So it will just bring it up to the House or the Senate, I believe, and so that they can move it on through to legalize it. Now, I believe it would legalize. I don't want to speak on it too much. I'm not exactly sure how that stage works, but here's what I know about issue 2, is that it allows marijuana to be packaged with almost no label. It can have I saw packages. It said Jolly Ranchers on the face, and then in small letters down at the bottom, it said marijuana or something like that in a small little word. So it's the allure and how it looks. So it's the packaging. It goes from a joint smelling like a skunk to a gummy that looks like a Skittle. And so that is one of my biggest concerns. But to your point, what you were asking about the equity is this is how the funding of the state is going to bring it into like rehabs and nursing homes, and who gets to bring that in. So the growers and the people that are going to make the most money off of this, it's all monitored by the state, and through this piece of legislation or amendment, whatever it is right. It's not as simple as just legalizing marijuana. Because I don't smoke, but I would say, it's probably safer than alcohol. Okay, alcohol kills a lot more people than marijuana does.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
Yeah, but the point I think that's important to remember is when you have a culture that accepts it and packages it and puts it on the gas station shelf right next to the lighters and the Red Bull and, the energy shots and the marijuana gummies. And it's also, remember this, in the old days, you had about 10% THC. The joints were maybe 10 to 20% THC. Now they have pulled out the smell and all the other stuff, and it's pure. It's between 50 and 90% pure. So These things are extremely powerful. They don't smell bad, and it's super easy to OD. And the lady that I met last week that was doing a town hall with us, she has a friend whose son died from an overdose on this stuff. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. And that's one of my biggest concerns with issue 2 is the fact that, children could see these gummies or these, candies and just think that that's exactly what it is. Why wouldn't they? They're children, and then something like that happens, and that could be bad.
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch on that for a second, but you know, On back to issue 1, there are, I believe, well, I can't really say the government. I've had people tell me, the government is, we got to vote yes for issue 1 because the government, that leaves the government in control, and I don't want to have abortions all the way up until the time of birth, so we have to vote yes. And I'm just, blew my mind for a minute.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, because when you spin it like that, but remember, on August 8th, they also said that you want to keep control of the ability to change the Constitution, because we were raising the threshold. If you raise the threshold, you give the government more power. And in essence, they're true in the same year. You don't want the government to have power over, your health care decisions. But you said it earlier. I want a woman to have the right to her body and her health care decisions. But what we're talking about is a child under 18 having a gender reassignment surgery without his parental consent. And we're talking about any person having an abortion without parental consent. But even broader than that, if you believe that the Bible says that God knew us before we were formed in our mother's womb, if you believe the Bible story about John the Baptist and Mary, the mother of Jesus, when they came together, the baby leaped inside her womb because John the Baptist recognized Jesus. This is the Bible story of when the mother of John the Baptist and Mary, mother of Jesus, met. Now that proves to you, and it says that she was filled with the Holy Spirit. So that proves to you that child is a child. It's a human being. So just on that basis, as a Christian, that's where I would come from on that. But just on that basis, at a minimum, when the heartbeat is detected, to say that that you can have that abortion, and who's going to determine if she can have that abortion? I'm going to read here in a minute, and you're going to see who's going to have the right to make that decision. Okay, the government is not, here's how I would word it. We're not taking rights from someone. We're protecting life, okay? We're just protecting life. Once you're pregnant and you get to that viability, and what is fetal viability? Who is making that decision? It goes to the doctor. Who's the doctor? The abortionist is the one making the decision. So it's like giving the big oil companies all of the ability to make their own regulations.
Yeah.
Because that's essentially what this is going to do. So it's all about how it's worded, just to finalize that point you made about taking a woman's decision. Health, we're talking about reproductive decisions when it comes to sex organs, and pregnancy. That's ultimately what this is about. And that's where we would say, once you're pregnant and you're past viability, the state should not allow for an abortion, and the abortionist is making the decision if she can have an abortion.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that could, the viability of the child or of the baby could mean anything from one person to the next.
That's true.
And it's really scary.
Yeah.
To think that a 9-month-old child ready to be born in 3 days can be aborted.
Yeah.
I never would have dreamed, if you would have asked me 10 years ago, that Ohio would be pushing something like this.
Yeah.
I would have never believed it.
We could wake up on November 8th and be worse than California.
Yeah, I call it, I've been telling people, vote no, don't California or Ohio.
I like that, yeah. Vote no, yeah, absolutely. Everything we're talking about here, for people listening, I think it's important that you understand enough about this so you can share with others, because the last 2 weeks is going to be a lot of heated conversations, man. And if you don't know how to defend this, the other side has a very convincing argument. And it's, why is it? Because you see the commercials on YouTube, you see the commercials on Facebook, you see the commercials on TV, you hear the commercials on the radio, you become indoctrinated with a yes vote. And if our voice out here isn't loud, and then we're saying, here's what it really means and what it will do, then you aren't able to counter that. Culture sets everything. It's all about what you're around, what you listen to, what you take in. If you're hearing more advice on the yes vote than the no vote, then it's going to be hard for you to defend the no vote. And I'm telling you, this thing really needs to be defended, this no vote, because it is that dangerous. It really is important. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And like I said, back to what I said, that was the point of this whole thing, is to try to educate people and to also train is to try to educate people and get people to is to try to educate people and get people to go do their own research, convince them to do that. I believe that's the first step in educating people about what this really is and what it does. More and more people need to start doing that for themselves. And I'm glad you provided that website. And I also believe you can pretty much find it on the Secretary of State's website as well.
Yes.
I'll put that on here. But if there's anything else, I think we got about 2 minutes left. If there's anything else you want to add or anything else you want to say, time is yours, Jason.
Okay, let me just run through. If we got 2 minutes, please look up the language on this amendment. But it also says, however, abortion may be prohibited after fetal viability, but in no case may such an abortion be prohibited if in the professional judgment of the pregnant patient's treating physician, it is necessary to protect the pregnant patient's life or health. And who is the pregnant person's treating physician? That is the abortionist. And what is a pregnant person's health? That could be emotional health. So this thing leaves the door open for any reason. The lady could be having a bad day and on the table decides she wants to have an abortion, and this would allow it. Listen, I'm all about, like we just said, educating people and setting a culture to where people want to know what's going on. You want to know who's running for mayor. You want to know who's running for city council. You want to know what is vote no, what is issue one about. And so I hope that we can set a culture that people care about this. We take the politics off of this civic American duty of ours to educate ourselves and go out there and vote on these things wisely. We will hold ourselves to a higher standard, Ryan, than voting for people we don't know anything about and issues we never heard of. I don't care if it's a tax levy for the library, whatever it is. Educate yourself on this, and we're going to have a whole new America.
Yes, sir. And one last thing. I'm glad that you said that about getting involved. That's one of the things I wanted to add, but I forgot. People need to get involved. I see a lot of couch complainers who sit on their couches and complain that, nothing's right. They complain about this, they complain about that, but they don't get up and actually go and do something about it. You and I, we've made that decision to get involved and do something about it. And I wish more people would. They say one person can't make a difference. Well, it absolutely can. Yeah. If everybody just got involved, we could change the world, my friend. So I thank you again, Jason, for coming on.
All right, Ryan. Good talking to you. Thanks, guys.
All right, you too, my friend.